Jesse Morgan's teeth clicked together with the force of the blow. "You're a damn liar, boy. Your ma ain't no bounty hunter." The backhand spun 8-year-old Jesse sideways. His mouth hit the edge of the general store counter, and the taste of iron flooded his tongue. Tin soldiers he'd been lining up in neat ranks tumbled off the counter, clattering across the floor like a broken army. Blood slid from his split lip, warm against his chin. The store swam in his vision. "Please, mister, I ain't lying," Jesse choked, the words snagged on tears and fear. "Shut it." The ranch hand, Frank Dawson, sweat and whiskey soaked into his shirt, mean drunk stamped in his eyes, fisted a hand in Jesse's collar and yanked him off his feet. The boy's boots kicked helplessly in the air. "No woman hunts bounties. You're just running your mouth to sound big, you little pest." Jesse's gaze flicked toward the counter. Mr. Hutchkins, the storekeeper, hovered there like a ghost, face gone pale, hands frozen over the ledger. Near the pot-bellied stove, 2 men lounged in chairs, boots propped up, grinning as if the whole thing were a show put on for them. Not one of them stepped forward. "My mama is a bounty hunter," Jesse insisted, voice wobbling but stubborn. "She's the best in 3 whole territories. She's bringin' in the Garrett brothers right now." Dawson's face flushed dark, the shade of a storm bruise. "I said shut up." His hand drew back for another strike. The door exploded inward. It hit the stopper with a bang that rattled the glass, and boot heels hit the plank floor with the steady, merciless beat of a war drum. Heat and daylight poured in behind the shadow in the doorway. Every head in the store turned. Sarah Morgan stood framed in the entrance, the afternoon sun burning a halo around her worn black coat. Trail dust clung to the hem. Dark spatters stained the front of her shirt, some dried brown, some still fresh. A length of iron shackles dangled from her left hand, the chain clinking softly as she moved. Her right hand rested, easy but ready, on the holstered Schofield at her hip. Through the open doorway behind her, 2 men slumped in their saddles, bound hand and foot, faces swollen and crusted with blood. The Garrett brothers, wanted for murder and robbery, alive if they were smart, dead if they were. Sarah's gray eyes, cold as a winter river under ice, locked on Dawson's raised hand. "Take your hand off my boy." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was the kind of quiet a man hears right before a gunshot. "Before this trail winds any farther, partner, if this kind of frontier justice speaks to you, hitch your wagon to this channel, tap that like button and subscribe to Outlaw Whisper Films, drop a comment telling me which country or territory you're listening from. It always amazes me how far these old dust road stories travel. Now keep your eyes up. What's coming next has a way of catching folks off guard." Dawson's arm froze in mid-swing, as if someone had turned him to stone. Color drained from his cheeks faster than whiskey from a cracked bottle. His fingers slackened in Jesse's shirt, but didn't quite let go, trembling where they dug into the fabric. His liquor-fogged mind struggled to match what he was seeing with what he'd been mocking. Sarah stepped fully into the store. The light behind her turned her into a dark outline rimmed with fire, like an angel of vengeance, or a demon, depending on which side of the law you walked. She was 34, but frontier years were heavy years. They sat on a person like extra stones in a saddlebag. Her face looked like it had been chiseled by wind and hard choices, cheekbones sharp, jaw set. Not soft but not cruel either, just unyielding. Her dark hair was braided tight and severe, dragged back from a face that might once have been gentle, maybe even pretty in another life. The plains and the blood and the miles had burned that away, leaving something carved and fierce that made careless men think twice. "I said," she repeated, one measured step bringing her closer, "take your hand off my boy." Her boots ticked against the plank floor, each step landing with the crisp inevitability of a countdown. "That was 1 second," she murmured. "You get 2 more before I start decidin' things you won't like." "Now, ma'am, Dawson's voice cracked like ice on a winter pond. His hand dropped from Jesse's collar as if the fabric had turned red-hot. He stumbled backward, nearly tangling in his own boots in his rush to put distance between himself and the child. "The kid was running his mouth," Dawson blurted, "spinning yarns about his mama being some kind of bounty hunter." Sarah walked right past him as if he were nothing more than a shadow on the wall. Whoever she was aiming at, it wasn't him. Not yet. All that cold, sharp focus narrowed to one small boy. She knelt until she was eye level with Jesse. Up close, the hard mask of her face softened by the slightest degree. Her fingers, calloused from reins and gun grips, were gentle as she turned his chin, examining the damage. The split lip, the red flare on his cheek that would soon darken into a bruise, the tears carving pale tracks through the dust on his face. "You tellin' stories, Jesse?" she asked quietly. "No, Mama." His voice came out small, but it didn't shake. His chin tipped up with the same stubborn streak she wore like armor. "I just told the truth, like you said I always ought to. They didn't believe me." "Truth is a hard meal for some folks," Sarah said, pulling a surprisingly clean handkerchief from her pocket and dabbing the blood from his lip with careful, practiced motions. "Especially when it don't match the picture they're holdin' of the world." She brushed his cheek with her thumb, a tenderness no one else in the store would ever be on the receiving end of. "You did right. Don't you ever say you're sorry for speaking the truth." She rose, her hand staying on Jesse's shoulder, steady and possessive. Then she turned to Dawson. The warmth vanished, as if someone had snuffed a lamp. "My name," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room, "is Sarah Morgan." Each word landed like a small hammer. "I carry lawful bounty contracts from 3 territorial governors and 2 federal marshals. In the last 6 years, I've brought in 47 wanted men, 38 brethren, 9 who chose to pull iron or run when they should have kept their hands where I could see 'em." She tilted her head toward the doorway, to where the Garrett brothers shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. "Those 2 outside, they're worth $800 between 'em. Their posters are nailed up in every sheriff's office from here to Denver. I've got the writs in my saddlebag to prove all of it." She let the words hang there. Dawson's face cycled through disbelief, then reluctant recognition, then something close to horror. Behind him, the men by the stove had gone rigid, their earlier smirks evaporated. Nobody seemed to find anything funny anymore. "Now," Sarah continued, one brow lifting just slightly, "I got a question for you, Mr. D. Dawson," he croaked. "Frank Dawson, ma'am." "Well, Mr. Dawson." She took a step closer. She was a good 6 inches shorter than he was, lighter by plenty, but somehow she seemed to loom over him anyway, the way a cliff looms over a man standing too close to the edge. "Did you hit my boy because you truly thought he was lying, or because you didn't care for the truth he was telling?" She let the question sink in. "If my son ever lies," she went on, her tone a shade softer, "I'll deal with him. That's my job, not yours. But if you laid hands on him for speaking honest, for standing up for his mama when small men decided to sneer, then you and I have a different sort of business." Dawson's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. No sound came. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air inside. His eyes flicked toward the door. Sarah watched the calculation move through him, distance to the street, time to draw, her hand on the Schofield. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Don't even let the thought of running finish forming in your skull, Mr. Dawson," she said mildly. "I just spent 3 days dogging the Garrett brothers across some of the roughest country this side of the divide. I'm bone tired. I haven't had a hot meal in longer than I care to mention, and I am not feeling charitable." Her voice didn't rise, but it tightened like a noose. "You wouldn't make it 5 steps before I put a bullet through your knee. Then we'd have ourselves a long talk about manners while you bled all over Mr. Hutchins' clean floor." In my floor now, Sarah, there's no reason for violence in my establishment. The store owner finally found his voice, though it came out high and strained. I run a respectable place. Sarah's head turned slowly toward him, the way cannon turns when it picks a new target. You watched a grown man strike an 8-year-old and you kept your hands folded and your mouth shut, she said. You call that respectable, Hutchkins? He flinched. I didn't want to get involved. In what? She snapped. In protecting a child, in baying a human being instead of a ledger with arms. Her contempt hit like spit in his face. Jesse been walking into this store since he could carry a coin in his pocket. His money's always been good enough for you. But the moment he needed someone to stand up, you discovered a sudden interest in minding your own business. She turned away from him as if he were no longer worth noticing, eyes cutting back to Dawson. Here, what's gonna happen, Mr. Dawson? You're going to apologize to my son. A real apology, not some half-mumbled mess. You're going to get down on your knees so you're looking him in the eye. And you will tell him you were wrong to hit him, wrong to call him a liar, and wrong to spend your temper on a child. Dawson's stubborn pride gave one last twitch. Now hold on. The Schofield cleared leather so fast most folks in the room never saw the movement. One breath she was unarmed. The next, a nickel-plated barrel stared at Dawson's chest from 6 feet away, the hammer cocked with a metallic snap that sounded like a nail being driven into a coffin. I wasn't asking, Sarah said softly. I was telling. That's the difference between a request and an order. You follow. Whatever scraps of fight left in him crumbled. His knees hit the floor with a dull thud that rattled the floorboards. Suddenly, he seemed smaller, like a balloon with all the air let out. I'm sorry, boy. He couldn't quite meet Jesse's eyes. I was wrong to lay hands on you, wrong to call you a liar. Your mama, she is exactly what you said she was. I should have believed you. Jesse looked up at his mother. She gave one small nod. I accept your apology, Mr. Dawson, Jesse said carefully, using the sort of formal tone Sarah had drilled into him. But you shouldn't hit kids no more. It ain't right. Isn't right, Sarah corrected quietly. Grammar, baby. Isn't right, Jesse repeated. The faintest flicker of a smile touched Sarah's mouth. The Schofield slid back into its holster with the same effortless grace with which it had appeared. Get up, she told Dawson, and get out of my sight. If I see you near my boy again or hear you running that mouth about him or me in ways I don't care for, I'll come looking. And unlike with the Garrett brothers, it won't be bounty money I'm after. It'll be a personal account that needs settling. Clear. Yes, ma'am, clear as glass. He scrambled up, humiliated and shaken, and all but bolted for the door. It slammed behind him, rattling the windows. The two men by the stove exchanged a quick look and ghosted through the back, eager to vanish from whatever might happen next. In the space of half a minute, the store was empty save for Sarah, Jesse, and a thoroughly cowed Mr. Hutchkins. Sarah looked at the storekeeper, her expression still stone-hard. My boy came in here to look at those tin soldiers he's been savin' for. She nodded toward the scattered army on the floor. What's your price on the set? $2, Hutchkins blurted, then wavered under her stare. But for Jesse, considering, after what just happened, $1. Special, good customer discount. $2 is the price you put on 'em, Sarah said. $2 is what I'll pay. I don't take charity, and I sure as sin don't take fair discounts. She pulled coins from her pocket and laid them on the counter. Each one clicked against the wood, with the sound of a nail being driven into Hutchkins' shame. Jesse, gather your soldiers, all of 'em. We're taking 'em home. Jesse dropped to his knees and began collecting the fallen tin men, blue-coated cavalry, infantry with rifles, a tiny cannon and crew. His hands trembled now that the danger had passed and the shock had somewhere to go. Sarah watched him for a moment, then knelt beside him and helped, her larger hands moving among his smaller ones. You did good today, she murmured, low enough that Hutchkins couldn't hear. Standing up for what's true even when it scared you half to death, that's no small thing. I was real scared, Mama. His voice cracked, fresh tears welled up. Mr. Dawson was so mad, nobody would help. I thought maybe I shouldn't have said nothing about you being a bounty hunter. It just made trouble. Look at me. She cupped his face gently, turning him toward her. Being scared don't erase your courage, she said. Being brave ain't about missing fear. It's about feeling it and still doing the right thing. You hear me? He nodded, sniffling. And you never apologize for speaking the truth about who I am, or who you are. I know it's not easy being the son of a woman in my line of work. Other kids whisper. Their parents talk like I'm something shameful. Billy Thompson said you're not a lady 'cause ladies don't hunt men for money, Jesse mumbled. He said his pa said you're no better than a. He faltered, face flushing. The word stuck in his throat. A whore, Sarah finished bluntly. Jesse flinched hearing his mother say it aloud. That what his pa said? Jesse nodded, miserable. Sarah's jaw clenched, anger flashing through her eyes like lightning crawling along a summer cloud. When she spoke, her voice was level. Mr. Thompson is free to think whatever nonsense he likes about me. I don't spend much time worrying over the opinions of a man who waters his whiskey and cheats at cards. But you listen close, Jesse. She held his gaze, steady and unblinking. I don't hunt decent folks. I hunt killers, thieves, and men who break people for sport. I track 'em, I drag 'em in, and I take the lawful bounty posted on their heads. Territorial judges and federal marshals sign my papers. That badge of work may not look like a silk dress, but it's legal, and it keeps some of the worst men in these territories from sleeping easy. She paused to be sure he was really hearing her. Your grandmother, she said softly, fit all their rules for what a lady ought to be, pretty dresses, church socials, voiced no opinions that weren't handed to her first, never raised her voice, never stepped sideways from what folks expected. Her eyes clouded, looking back at something only she could see. And your grandfather came home drunk every Saturday night and beat her till she could barely stand. When she died at 34, the doctor wrote, fell down the stairs on a piece of paper and called it done. Your grandpa never spent a single day behind bars for killing, her slower than a bullet. Jesse's eyes went wide. Grandpa killed Grandma. As surely as if he'd put a gun to her head, Sarah said. Only difference was the method, took longer, hurt more. She drew in a breath, steadying herself. After she died, I had a choice. I could bend myself into the kind of woman men say they respect, marry some fellow who'd own me on paper, have his children, keep his house, and pray he never turned into his own version of your grandpa. Or, her mouth curled into something that was almost a smile, but sharper. Or I could learn to fight back, learn to protect myself, learn to track the kind of men who think they can hurt whoever they want and ride away laughing. I chose the second trail, never regretted it, not once, not even when the gossip gets thick in town. Even when people talk ugly about you, Jesse asked. Especially then, she replied. Their fear is talking, fear makes people mean. Remember that, Jesse. She stood, dusted off her knees, and gathered the last of the tin soldiers into his hands. Now, let's get these boys home. I've got to get my money from the sheriff before the Garretts out there bleed all over their saddles. She took his hand and led him out into the sunlight. The street had grown busier in the short time she'd been inside. News traveled fast in a town like Silver Creek. Faces peeked from windows and doorways, eyes following her every move. Across the way, Dawson already had an audience, arms waving as he spun his version of the story, no doubt painting himself the victim and Sarah the villain. Let him talk, she thought. The truth had longer legs. The Garrett brothers waited where she'd left them. Hands shackled behind their backs, ankles tied to stirrups, They slumped in their saddles like sacks of grain. When she approached, the older one, Tom Garrett, lifted his head. "That your boy?" he asked, nodding toward Jesse. "My son," Sarah said, checking the ropes and irons with quick, practiced tugs. "Cute kid." There was something in his tone that made her hand drift without thinking back toward the Schofield. "Got your eyes." Same stubborn set to his jaw. "You got something you feel a need to say, Tom," Sarah replied, her voice edged with warning. "Go ahead and say it clean." "Just mackin' conversation, Ms. Morgan." Tom's smile pulled at a split lip, showing blood-stained teeth. "Long ride to the jail. Figured we might pass the time with pleasant talk." "We ain't friends," Sarah said. "I'm the woman who tracked you across 3 territories and had to shoot you both in the legs because you didn't know when to lay your guns down. The only talkin' we're doin' is me givin' orders and you followin' them." "Fair enough." Tom's smile didn't vanish, but it thinned. "You might want to keep a tighter grip on that boy, though. Word's gettin' around about you. Some men might decide the fastest way to hurt you is through him." Sarah moved so fast Jesse hardly saw her arm blur. One heartbeat she was standing by the horses, the next the cold mouth of her Schofield was pressed against Tom Garrett's temple, the hammer drawn back. "You threatenin' my son, Tom?" she asked, her voice like ground glass. "Because if you are, I'll drop you right here in the dust and tell the judge you made a break for it. Nobody on a jury in this territory is gonna shed a tear over you." "Jesus, woman, no," Tom blurted, the bravado leaking out of him. "I ain't threatenin', I'm warnin' you." His eyes were wide now, all swagger gone. "There's talk," he rushed on. "Men know your name now, know about the kid. Some of 'em, they won't take kindly to what you've done to their brothers and partners." Sarah studied his face, reading the sweat on his brow, the jump of a pulse in his neck. Then she eased the gun away, though she didn't put it back in the holster. "What talk?" she asked. "Who's been sayin' my name?" "I don't have names," Tom said quickly. 2 weeks ago my brother and me were holed up at a camp near Deadwood. Couple other fellas there, drifters, outlaws. Your name came up round the fire. Someone said you brought in the Fletcher gang last month. Big fellow with a scar across his nose started talkin' about you. Didn't catch what they called him." Sarah's blood went cold. "How big?" she asked quietly. "What'd he sound like?" "Tall, maybe 6'2", 6'3", built like a bull. Sounded Southern Georgia, Alabama, something around there. Wore a preacher's coat, black, brass buttons, real proper looking for a camp full of thieves. His eyes," Tom shuddered. "Cold, like looking at a rattler coiled up. And I've run with some mean men, Ms. Morgan. This one, he made even us uneasy." Sarah knew exactly who he was describing. Reverend Ezekiel Cole. Not a true preacher, just a man with a Bible in one hand and a taste for quoting scripture while he hurt people with the other. Wanted in 5 territories for a list of crimes so long it nearly took 2 posters. Murder, rape, robbery, torture. $2,000 on his head, alive or dead, the largest bounty Sarah had ever chased. She'd been hunting him for 8 months, ever since he ambushed a federal marshal outside Denver and slaughtered the man's family. "He say anything else?" she demanded, "where he was headed?" Tom shook his head. "Not much. We cleared out at first light. I didn't want to be around when a man like that decided trouble'd be fun. But before we left, I heard him say he had unfinished business in Silver Creek. That's here, ain't it?" Sarah's grip tightened around the Schofield. Silver Creek, her town. The only place she'd stayed longer than a few months since Jesse was born. A place that had started to feel like something dangerous to wanderers, a home. And now Ezekiel Cole was looking this way, with unfinished business that sounded like it might be written in blood. Tom wasn't done. "He knew about you," he added. "More than reputation. Knew you'd got the Fletchers. Knew you work out of Silver Creek." It sounded like someone had been written him. He was reading off a fancy piece of paper when he talked about you. Folded it up quick when he noticed us looking. Sarah's stomach turned to ice. It was one thing for Cole to know her name. Bounty hunters were talked about by the men they chased. But details, where she stayed, who she'd caught, when that meant someone was feeding him information. Someone close. Tom, she said, her voice gone flat again, if you're lying to rattle me, I will spend the rest of your life making you wish I just left you in the dirt. You understand me? I'm telling you God's honest truth, he said. I might be a thief and a fool, but I don't drag kids into another man's grudge. Your boy deserves better than to be used as a message. She held his gaze, then jerked her chin at Marcus, his younger brother. You back him up. Marcus swallowed. Every word, he said. I was there, heard the same talk. This Cole fella, he's wrong in the head in a way that scares even us. And he knows your name, knows your town. Someone's written him from here. Sarah nodded once. When we reach the sheriff, she said, you're both going to repeat every bit of this to him. In return, I'll tell the judge you cooperated. It won't erase what you did to that stage driver, but it might swap a rope for a prison cell. Fair trade. The brothers shared a look. More than fair, Tom said quietly. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Sarah took Jesse's hand. Come on, baby. Let's put these two behind bars and get you home. It's been a long day. They walked down the main street, Sarah leading the reins of the two captive outlaws. Townsfolk stopped in their tracks to stare. Some nodded with respect. Some frowned with disapproval. Most just stared with that hungry curiosity that always followed blood and gun smoke. Jesse walked tall beside his mother, tin soldiers clutched in one arm, the other tiny hand wrapped in hers. Whatever shame he'd felt earlier was gone. His eyes were bright with something else now, pride. Sheriff Davidson stood on the porch of his office waiting, arms folded. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and weathered, a man who'd seen what the frontier could do and stayed anyway. Sarah, he tipped his head in greeting, his eyes sliding to the Garrett brothers, taking in the bruises, the shackles. Heard there was a ruckus over at Hutchkins' place. News gallops in this town. I need to cash in on these two, lock 'em up, and then we need to talk, Sarah said, swinging down from her horse and lifting Jesse to the ground. Private, they have information. Davidson's gaze sharpened. What kind of information? The kind with the name Ezekiel Cole stuck to it, she said under her breath. And the kind that suggests someone in this town's been written him letters about me. Davidson's face lost a shade of color. All right, he said grimly. Let's get them secured, then we'll talk inside. He hollered for his deputy, a young man named Williams with more eagerness than years. Williams hustled the Garrett brothers into separate cells, checking their wounds under Sarah's watchful eye to make sure they wouldn't bleed out before trial. While they were occupied, Sarah led Jesse to a bench outside. She knelt again so they were face to face. Jesse, she said softly, I need you to listen close to what I'm about to say. Can you do that? Yes, Mama, he whispered. There may be a very bad man common to town, worse than any I've brought in so far. He's angry I've been dragging his kind in front of judges. She took his small hands in hers. I don't know for certain he's common, but I have to be ready if he does. And that means you're going to be extra careful for a while. He nodded, eyes wide. For the next few weeks, maybe longer, you don't go anywhere alone, she told him. You're either with me or with Mrs. Patterson next door or right here with Sheriff Davidson or Deputy Williams. You don't walk to school by yourself. You don't go playing in the yard alone. You don't come to the store without a grown-up. No exceptions. You understand? Is he gonna try to hurt me? Jesse's voice trembled. Not if I'm breathin', Sarah said, steel under the words. But some bad men try to get at folks like me by hurtin' the ones we love. That's why I need you to be smart, careful. Do exactly what I tell you until I say different. Can you promise me that? I promise, Mama. He flung his arms around her neck, hugging her tight. I'll do everything you say. She held him close for a long moment, breathing in the dusty, sun-warmed scent of her child. The one thing on earth she would burn the whole world for. Then she pulled back. "Go on into the office," she said gently. "Sit with Deputy Williams. Line your soldiers up on his desk if he doesn't mind. No eavesdropping on grown-up talk, you hear?" "Yes, ma'am." Jesse clutched his tin army like treasure and slipped inside. When she turned back, Davidson was waiting, his expression grave. "My office," he said quietly, leading her around back to a small room that served as his private space. Once the door shut behind them, he motioned toward a chair. "Tell me everything." Sarah ignored the chair, too wired to sit. She planted her hands on the back of it instead. "Tom Garrett says he and his brother crossed paths with Ezekiel Cole near Deadwood 2 weeks ago," she began. "Cole was talking about me by name. Knew I'd brought in the Fletchers. Knew I work out of Silver Creek. Said he had unfinished business here. Marcus backs the story and added that Cole was reading from a letter that had details about my movements. Somebody here is feeding him information." "You sure it was Cole?" Davidson asked. Tall, thick-built, scar across his nose, southern drawl, black preacher's coat with brass buttons. Sarah counted off on her fingers. "Fits Ezekiel Cole like a coffin. And yes, I believe the Garretts. They're already caught, already fastened trial. They don't gain a thing by lying about this," and Tom looked genuinely shook. Davidson turned to the window and stared out at the street for a long moment, shoulders tight. "If Cole's common," he said slowly, "it won't just be for you. A man with that kind of bounty doesn't ride alone. He'll bring a crew, 5, 6 men at least. They'll come in fast and loud, and they won't bother aim their bullets careful." He turned back to her. "Sarah, I'm asking you as a friend, take Jesse and leave. Go to Denver. Go all the way to San Francisco. Go someplace he can't sniff you out. Let somebody else deal with Cole." "Run." The word landed sour in her mouth. "That's your advice. Pack up and flee from the only home I've managed to give my boy because some butcher in a preacher's coat wants a piece of me." "It's not running it, protecting your child," Davidson snapped. "That's what a good mother does." "A good mother also teaches her son you don't let bullies chase you across the map," Sarah shot back. "I ran after Jesse's pa died. Kansas to Colorado to Arizona and back. Always looking over my shoulder, never staying long enough to feel safe. 3 years ago I came here and decided I was done running. Put down roots. Built something. I won't tear it up because Cole decides he wants to make an example of me." They glared at each other across the cramped office, both too stubborn to look away. Finally, Davidson exhaled through his nose and dragged a hand down his face. "You're not leaving," he said. "No." "Then we plan for a fight." He pulled a map of Silver Creek and the surrounding land from a drawer and spread it across the desk.